Chapter 118 wiped out Jiyu Chungrui and his wife waited for them to leave and started tidying up the west room. Once they were done, they entered the interspace. After drinking a glass of water, Juying said, "Let's go up the mountain tomorrow after we deliver the goods to Brother Tian. First, we can cut some firewood for winter, and second, we can avoid the Chow family." "That's fine, but I don't think avoiding the Chow family is necessary. Since Manager Liu dared arrest the Chow family's butler, I don't think this matter will be over easily. I think the Chow family will be finished soon." Jiyu Chungrui said thoughtfully. "A centipede won't stop moving even in death. We should be careful." Juying shook her head. "Yeah, there's no harm in being careful." Jiyu Chungrui did not refute her after hearing her words. So the next day, after they were done with their work, the two of them put their valuables into the interspace and took Zhuang into the mountain. After Manager Liu and young Master Zhu returned, they interrogated Xiao Mu and the others overnight. Because they had learned from Jiyu Chungrui the location of the batch of military rations in advance, they quickly broke through Xiao Mu's line of defense, and he spilt everything he knew. In addition, there was also some information that Manager Liu had gathered. So, the following day, he sent people to restrain the entire Chow family. After that, young Master Zhu and Manager Liu went to the county and restrained the county mayor and governor. Of course, the wife of the county governor, Mrs. Jiang, was also under control. After that, they interrogated the mayor. Because he was just a cowardly puppet and had not done anything terrible, he readily confessed. As expected, when the county mayor found out that young Master Zhu was a third-ranked general on the third prince's side, he told him everything he knew and even took the initiative to resign from his position as county mayor. However, it did not go smoothly when they interrogated the county governor and his wife. Fortunately, they found a lot of evidence in the manor. In addition to their previous investigation, they beheaded the two and sent the rest of their family members to the mine. Elder Qiao and Qiao Mu were similarly beheaded in the Qiao family, and the other family members were exiled to the north. When Jiyu Chungrui and his wife came down from the mountain and received the news, they were in disbelief. One was young Master Zhu's identity, and the other was the speed of their action. They were still on guard against the Qiao family when the Qiao family had already been wiped out. "It seems like the third prince has already started investigating this county government," said Jiyu Chungrui. "Yeah, to dare have ideas about the army provisions, they are sure something else." Juying nodded in agreement. "That's not something we should be concerned about. Our days will be much easier now that the Qiao family doesn't keep an eye on us. By the way, didn't you want to do business in town before? Let's plan what we can do after the new year. The dried yuba is selling well and with a decent profit. It's a pity to give it up, so I think we should set up a workshop in the village." "That's a good idea. We'll have to find a reliable person in the village to manage it. Then I'll leave this matter to you." "No problem," he affirmed. As the saying goes, plans can't keep up with changes. Just as the two of them were looking for candidates, on the morning 5 days later, the assistant of Hongyun restaurant came to pick up the goods and told them, "Dr. Jiyu, Mrs. Jiyu, young Master Zhu is hosting a banquet at Hongyun restaurant to thank you. Please remember to go." After seeing the assistant off, the two of them waited for Tian Jiawang to pick up his goods. Once he was off, the couple packed up and walked to the town to attend the banquet. When they arrived in town, especially when they passed by the market, he found that there were more people with smiles on their faces. Even the number of people doing mom-and-pop businesses was much higher than before. Jiyu Chungrui curiously asked an old lady who was smiling, "Granny, is there any good news in town recently?" Chapter 119 Attending the banquet. There's good news, excellent news, and it's not just one. The old lady replied with a smile. Then, she pointed to a small shed not far away and said, "Young man, haven't you noticed that the people collecting protection fees in this market are gone? I heard that the county governor has also changed, and some of the previous miscellaneous taxes will be waived from next year. We commoners can finally live a good life." "That's right. In the past, there were various taxes that we had to pay. Now, we finally get to catch a breather," said a middle-aged woman selling pickled vegetables. "It's such a pity for my eldest daughter. I don't know where she's been sold to. She wiped her tears as she continued. As soon as she finished speaking, the lively atmosphere in the market dropped to the freezing point. Jiyu Chungrui and Ju Ying looked at each other and then walked away silently. At the same time, they finally realized how deep the waters in this county were. At least, it was much deeper than what they had seen. If they had not saved young Master Ju by chance, their lives would definitely not have turned for the better. When the two arrived at the restaurant, Manager Liu was already waiting at the entrance. When he saw them, he immediately came up to them and greeted them warmly. Dr. Jiyu, Mrs. Jiyu, you're here. Please come in. Uncle Liu, you're too polite. Jiyu Chungrui greeted him. Then, the couple followed him into the restaurant and entered a luxuriously decorated private room on the second floor. Manager Liu invited them to sit and said, "Let's sit down and have a drink first. The second owner will be here soon. Please do what you need to do." "Well, just wait," Jiyu Chungrui said. "That's true, we're acquaintances now. Tell me if you need anything, and don't be polite." Manager Liu turned around and left after saying that. Ju Ying stared at a plate of date paste cakes on the table. At first glance, she could tell it was an excellent artisan-made cake. She pinched a piece and put it in her mouth, tasting it. It's delicious. There are no impurities in it at all. If you like it, eat more. These old-fashioned snacks are really tasty when they're made fresh. Jiyu Chungrui pushed a plate of spring rolls in front of her as he said that. Ju Ying looked at the crispy golden snacks in front of her and replied, "To be honest, seeing these spring rolls reminds me of many different fried snacks. It's a pity I never learned how to make them, always missing something special." "Is it those snacks that were deep-fried in beef fat?" "Yes, it's always so fragrant, crunchy, and delicious. We can try making them later. Maybe I can reproduce it." "What are you two talking about? You seem to be having a good time." Young Master Ju smiled as he walked in, followed by a waiter. "We're just talking about some food. Brother Ju, please take a seat." Jiyu Chungrui stood up and said. Young Master Ju nodded his head and raised his hand to signal for him to sit down too. He sat on the main seat and said, "I'm not afraid of you guys laughing at me, but I'm also a glutton. Tell me what you guys want to eat, and we'll have a good meal this afternoon. Then don't mind if we do. Let's have Hongyun Restaurant's signature dishes, sourced beef, and red braised pork," suggested Jiyu Chungrui. Young Master Ju nodded and told the waiter. Then, he asked Ju Ying, "What do you want to eat?" Ju Ying wanted to say poached fish, but she remembered that young Master Ju was still injured. So she changed her words, "Stir-fried white prawns and some cold shredded tofu salad." "Shredded tofu salad, do we have it here?" Young Master Ju couldn't remember the dish no matter how hard he tried, so he looked at the waiter. The waiter nodded. "Yes, it's a new dish. It's only served after getting some advice from Mrs. Jiyu." "Then we'll have one." After young Master Ju finished ordering, he looked at the two of them and asked, "What else do you want to eat?" "Continue ordering. The three of us have to order at least 10 dishes and a soup, right?" Chapter 120 Restaurant. You're the owner here, so you must be more familiar with the menu than us. "I think you should order," said Ju Ying. "That's true." Young Master Ju nodded his head and looked at the waiter. Steamed yellow croaker, sea cucumber with scallion, for happiness meatballs, chrysanthemum tofu, stir-fried black fungus, sweet and sour radish shreds, and finally, a serving of duck soup. "What kind of wine would you like to drink, Brother Jiyu?" he asked. "You can't drink now," Jiyu Chungrui replied seriously. Young Master Ju's expression immediately changed. He had forgotten that Jiyu Chungrui was a doctor. If he had remembered, he would not have asked. Now, he could not even drink a sip even if he wanted to. He finally waved his hand at the waiter. "Please wait a moment." The waiter politely told them and filled the teapot with hot water before leaving. Young Master Ju then said, "I'd like to apologize to you first. My identity was a little sensitive before, so I didn't dare tell you the truth. I'm General Ju's second son, Ju Huaiming. I am here to transport grains this time, but I didn't expect to be backstabbed by the people around me." "Are those grains really military rations?" "Yes, otherwise, That group of people wouldn't have been convicted so quickly. Ju Huiming looked at Jiyu Chungrui in surprise and asked, "How did you know that's military rations?" "Just an afterthought. After all, ordinary merchants would not transport so much dry grain." "That's true. By the way, do you guys fancy the Chiao family's Dongxing restaurant? How about giving it to you two to run it? Aren't you afraid it'll steal Hongyun Restaurant's business?" Ju Ying asked after a moment of surprise. Having a competitor is good for improvement and innovation. Besides, this town is so prosperous, it's impossible for just us to monopolize the restaurant business. It's better to give it to sister-in-law. I think it's not a problem with your skills if you want to occupy half the customer base here. Then we'll accept your offer. By the way, how much does this restaurant cost? No, I said I'd give it to you, so I'm going to give it to you. After young Master Ju finished speaking, he took a contract and a key from his sleeve and handed them to her. "I know a little about the Jiyu family's situation, so it's better to put it under sister-in-law's name," he explained. When Jiyu Chungrui heard him mention the Jiyu family, he immediately remembered that his father had asked them for the recipe for bean sprouts. He nodded in agreement and said, "Thank you, Brother Ju. Why don't you change the way you announce it? You could say that you liked Ying's cooking so much that you asked her to be the manager. How about it?" Young Master Ju jokingly said, "Then I can't bear this name for nothing. In the future, I hope I can eat for free in your restaurant." "Of course. Even if there were no such thing, we wouldn't take your money anyway." "Then it's settled." Suddenly, Ju Ying thought of the Chiao family and the county governor, who had their houses confiscated. She looked at young Master Ju and asked, "Brother Ju, are you going to sell all the manors and shops you have seized?" "Yes, is there anything you want? Since we plan to open a restaurant, we must have something to sell. I'm thinking of buying a small manor to grow some vegetables, raise some cattle and sheep, or something else to supply the restaurant. I'll go back and look into this matter, checking which manor is suitable." Young Master Ju nodded. "Then I'll have to thank Brother Ju in advance. A manor worth less than 2,000 taels of silver will do." "All right, I'll remember this," young Master Ju affirmed. Soon, the food was served. Ju Ying tasted each dish carefully and found they were all well made, except for the fatty oil inside the red braised pork. She only ate one piece and couldn't eat any more. However, she didn't have the heart to pick on it, so she thought of taking another time to mention it to Manager Liu. Chapter 121 Planning. When they finally came out of the restaurant after having their fill, Ju Ying realized that Manager Liu was not there, so she could only keep this matter in mind. After leaving the restaurant, they both asked around and found Dongxin Restaurant. Looking at the plaque that had been thrown to the ground and trampled on, as well as the broken window, the two looked at each other. Not only did they not feel the slightest bit of heartache, but they felt happy instead. It could be seen that the Chiao family had angered the public. Therefore, there wouldn't be many people who would reject them taking the restaurant over. Ju Ying took out her key and went to open the entrance. There were also 2 floors here, with the lobby on the first floor measuring about 100 square meters, which is very spacious indeed. However, the room was a mess now. Although the tables and chairs were not broken, they were overturned, with all kinds of dishes and plates everywhere. There was no place to stand at all. After that, the two of them spent 2 hours tidying and cleaning up the place. The couple sat down after all that. Jiyu Chungrui turned his head and said, "Babe, what do you want to sell after opening up? These tables and chairs are all made of the best quality elm wood. If we use them, we can save some money." Ju Ying pondered and said, "Although General Ju said that he's not afraid of us affecting Hongyun Restaurant's business, we can't be that thick-skinned. So I plan to sell hot pot and barbecue with a few signature dishes, just like our original World's Northwestern restaurant. This way, there won't be any conflict." "That's a good idea. Not only will we avoid clashing with Hongyun Restaurant, but we'll also have an easier time with our business." Jiyu Chungrui nodded in agreement. After that, the couple discussed how to arrange the seats and tools. They went straight to the second floor when they were almost done with their discussion. The second floor was a much simpler design, with 8 private rooms. There were even 3 tables with dishes still on them. Seeing this, Ju Ying picked up the undamaged ones and packed them up, putting them aside. Then, she cleared the tables and cleaned up the utensils in the back kitchen. She didn't expect the kitchen to be even more chaotic. What could be taken away had been taken away, and what couldn't be taken away had been smashed. Seeing this, the two of them were too lazy to clean up. In the end, the two of them found the warehouse, but there was not even a single vegetable leaf. Jiyu Chungrui looked at the messy footprints on the ground and said, "It seems that when those guys left, they took away the rest of the things. Most likely. But I have to say, Elder Qiao is such a failure, owning such a big restaurant but doesn't even have a single loyal worker." Ju Ying added. Jiyu Chungrui said, "That's why we must be cautious when choosing our workers in the future. We have to treat them well too." "Yeah, but I think buying a few core servants with death contracts is better. I don't want to be stabbed in the back in the future." "Then we will go with your suggestion. The Ming dynasty is very strict about managing servants with death contracts, which will definitely put us at ease." After that, the two of them went outside and hired two laborists to remove all the garbage from the restaurant. Once finishing up their work, the two were about to go home when a middle-aged man with a bag on his back walked in. "Uncle, what's the matter?" Jiyu Chungrui went up to him. "Young man, are you the new owner of this building? I'm a specialist in renovating, and I have more than 20 people working under me. Do you want us to renovate the place?" The middle-aged man proposed as he scanned the restaurant. "Of course, but I haven't decided what to do yet. Why don't you tell me your contact address, uncle? I'll look for you when I've decided." "That's fine too. My name is Zhong Daniu. I live near the main street in the number 4 courtyard in the second alleyway. You'll know once you get there and ask around." The uncle turned around and left after giving his address. "The renovation here will cost at least 50 taels of silver," he added before leaving. Chapter 122. Paying in another way. Jiyu Chungrui and Ju Ying had a plan when they heard this. The two gave a pack of food to the beggar, which helped them, and went to the blacksmith's shop. They ordered 30 copper hot pots, an ordinary oven, several iron skewers, a few barbecue tongs, and a fine-toothed comb. Then, they went to a porcelain shop and ordered many plates and bowls. When they returned home that night, they were craving some barbecue. Thus, they went to the interspace to skewer some meat and had a good dinner. The next day, when the waiter of Hongyun restaurant came to pick up the goods, he handed Ju Ying a red contract and said, "Mrs. Jiyu, young Master Ju asked me to give this to you. He mentioned that this manor is in the neighboring Xiaohe village and has 120 acres of fertile land and 500 acres of grassland. It was originally the Qiao family's manor, mainly for rearing cattle and sheep. How much is this manor worth?" Ju Ying took the red contract and asked. "Young master didn't say. But according to what I know, the manor, the cattle, and the sheep are worth at least 5,000 taels of silver." "I understand. Thank you, brother. I'll personally give the silver to young Master Ju." Young Master Ju has been very busy recently. I'm afraid he won't have the time to see you. Thanks for the reminder." After sending him off, Ju Ying gave the title deed of the manor to Jiyu Chungrui and said, "Rui, do you think that Brother Ju has misunderstood and thinks that we want the manor for free?" "I don't think so. After capturing the county governor and mayor, he must have left behind a big mess and had to sort them out one by one. We'll find out how much this manor is worth later and pay him the silver." Jiyu Chungrui shook his head and said, "That's true, but he might not accept the money if we give it to him directly. I think we should give the recipe for the braised intestine to Hongyun restaurant and the method of making yuba. This way, we just have to manage our restaurant in the future." Jiyu Chungrui replied, "As long as you're willing to part with it, I have no objections. I just want you to live a carefree life." "Then it's decided. I'll write it down and give it to manager Liu." After seeing Brother Tian off, Ju Ying turned her head and asked, "Rui, what do you think about letting Brother Tian come to the restaurant to help us? Brother Tian is a good person, and I can see that his small business is doing quite well. I don't know if he is willing to part with it, but I will ask him later." Ju Ying suggested, "Let's give it a try. I heard that bean sprouts are selling for a copper per pound now, and there's not much profit in it now." After lunch, Ju Ying took out a pen and paper and wrote down the recipe for the braised intestine, writing it in detail. For example, the ingredients needed for braised pig trotters, chicken, duck, and others were all written clearly. Honestly, without young Master Ju's benevolence, she wouldn't have been willing to give up on this series of prescriptions. After all, these recipes alone were enough to support a 100-year-old restaurant. The makings of Yuba were simple, too, it's just no one had thought of it yet. Finally, she mentioned the technique of not being greasy with red braised meat. She handed it to Jiyu Chungrui and said, "Rui, can you copyright it for me since I can't write in traditional words? Are you sure you won't regret giving all these recipes away?" Jiyu Chungrui took it and glanced at it. Then, he looked at her in shock. "I don't regret it. I have plenty of recipes in my head." Ju Ying replied boastfully, then turned around and left the room. Seeing this, Jiyu Chungrui smiled and shook his head. He knew that she was reluctant, but since she had already written it, it meant that she had already thought about it. Therefore, he did not hesitate and went to his study to copyright it with a small pen. After they were done, the two went straight to the town to find Manager Liu. Manager Liu had just finished his work when he saw the couple. He immediately approached them and asked, "Dr. Jiyu, Mrs. Jiyu, please come in. Sorry to disturb you, but we're here today to pay for young Master Ju's manor and to ask you who would be better at helping us to renovate it." Jiyu Chungrui said. Chapter 123 Taken Advantage. Young Master Ju said, "The manor is a gift to you too, and we will not take any payment for it. As for the renovation, the one who renovated Hongyun Restaurant was Zhong Danyu from the main street. If you like his skills, you can also go to him. He's an honest person," said Manager Liu. "Oh, we know Zhong Danyu." Jiyu Chungrui nodded. Then, he gave the letter with the recipes to Manager Liu and said, "I'll have to trouble you to pass this to young Master Ju. Consider it as payment for the manor." This. Young Master Ju said he didn't want it. Manager Liu waved his hand. "Since we said we bought it, we can't pay with nothing. Please help us give it to him." "All right, but he'll just hand it over." "Thank you, we'll be leaving now." Jiyu Chungrui nodded and went to the main street with Ju Ying. They found Zhong Danyu and went to Dongxing Restaurant with him to discuss the renovation work. On the other hand, Manager Liu took the letter to the county office after a short rest. He finally found Ju Huiming in the county government office, busy dealing with official documents. After seeing young Master Ju was done with a document in his hands, he came forward to hand over the envelope. "Master, Dr. Jiyu gave this to you. He said it's the money for the manor." "Oh, where did he get the silver from?" young Master Ju asked curiously after receiving it. Manager Liu shook his head after hearing this. As far as he knew, the couple's money was all provided by him. At most, it did not exceed 150 taels. He didn't know where they had gotten a stack of silver notes. That's right. From the thickness of the envelope, he had thought it was a stack of banknotes. Ju Huiming opened it curiously and was stunned when he read the recipes. He quickly looked down and smiled when he saw the last reminder. "You previously said that I was too soft-hearted and should not give them a manor. Look, these recipes alone are more than enough to cover the cost of the restaurant. We've taken advantage of them." After finishing speaking, he handed the letter to Manager Liu. Manager Liu took it and read it carefully, and he couldn't stop reading. The more he read, the more fascinated and excited he became. The key was that many of the ingredients in the recipes were medicinal herbs, which he had never thought of. No wonder Chef Ju couldn't figure out the recipe for the braised intestines. He dared say that these recipes could definitely maintain Hongyun Restaurant for another 100 years. He thought of this and said excitedly, "I can't believe Mrs. Jiyu is willing to part with these." Indeed, but this also shows that she has a talent for cooking. As Ju Huiming said this, he thought of the sweet and sour shredded radish that Ju Ying made once. "Tell me, why is it that even her shredded radish tastes better than others? Why can't she be born a man?" He mumbled regretfully. "What a pity." The corner of Manager Liu's mouth twitched. "So what should we do with these recipes? Keep them?" "Yeah, keep them, and just take care of the couple when they open for business. Also, Estimate how much these recipes are worth. At the end of the year, we can deduct them from our costs and use them as payment for the given restaurant. I understand. I'll leave you to your work then. Wait, what kind of people do you think the couple are? Manager Liu hesitated for a moment before saying, to be honest, I haven't had much contact with them, but I can be sure they're very trustworthy. I remember that there was one time when Dr. Jiu couldn't come, so Mrs. Jiu sent us the bean sprouts. At that time, I was sure she was not feeling well, but she still gritted her teeth and sent them to us. Also, when Elder Qiao kidnapped them, they didn't think of leaving immediately after they escaped. Instead, they reported it to our restaurant. Otherwise, we would have been lost in the dark the next day. Chapter 124 The Manor 1. Manager Liu paused for a moment before continuing. Also, he knows his manners, knowing when to advance and when to retreat. Just like today's matter. To be honest, with your kindness, they could have silently accepted this manor without saying a word. If I were pushed out of the family, I would never help them again, let alone treat their illness for free. Of course, he might have been forced to help because of his identity, but it's rare for him to help sincerely. Young Master Ju quipped in, it seems you have a very high opinion of this couple. For now, yes. But I don't know what will happen in the future. Okay, then, let's try these recipes out. Yes. Manager Liu replied and put away the recipes, treating them like treasures. He then hurried back. After the restaurant's renovation was settled, Ju Ying and her husband went to the manor. At the entrance of the second courtyard, she was stopped by a man in his 30s. Who are you two looking for? We are the new masters of this manor. Who are you? Ju Ying asked as she flashed the title deed to him. So it's the new owner. Please come in, Enchanting, the temporary butler of this manor. After the man finished speaking, he turned around and led them into the courtyard. Jiu Chongrui looked at his familiarity with the manor and asked, Changshan, right? Where's the previous butler of the manor? They've been taken away. Anyone related to the Qiao family was taken away, and I heard they were sold to other places. Then you are? Ju Ying asked. The rest of us are either tenants or long-term workers. Long-term worker? Yes, the long-term workers are mainly those who help raise cattle and sheep. The livestock here needs more care than us. I see. Then do you know how many livestock are in here? I can't give you the full details, but the grassland over there is full of cattle and sheep. I heard it produces about 300 cattle and 2,000 sheep yearly, and it's much better than farming. Ju Ying was happy to hear that. If they could produce this much every year, it would be more than enough to supply the consumption of their restaurant. She replied, then please take us to see them. Come with me. Changshan led them to the fields after that. They could see rows of livestock sheds from afar and more than a dozen piles of hay covered with oilcloth on the side. When the group arrived, more than 10 people were busy cutting grass. Changshan stepped forward and introduced them. There's a total of 30 people here, with 15 of them mainly in charge of the fodder. 10 people are in charge of cleaning up the sheep pens. 3 women who usually helped deliver newborns, taking care of the calves and lambs. There's a doctor who treats the sick livestock. Finally, a manager who is in charge of everything here. Uncle Nyan, he shouted, the new owner is here. Come and meet them. After a while, a middle-aged man in a sheepskin coat came out while carrying a tobacco pipe and a pot. He was stunned for a moment when he saw Jiu Chongrui and Ju Ying, and he said indifferently, are the two of you the new owners? Yes, Uncle Nyan. We're here to understand the situation. Jiu Chongrui greeted him and replied, do look around. But be careful when you go in, don't scare the little ones inside. Right, there are 1,082 cows now. Before the new year, 200 of them will be ready for slaughter. There are fewer than 4,000 sheep, and we can prepare about 800 before the new year. The old man pointed at the rows of sheds behind him. You are very knowledgeable. Jiu Chongrui looked at his lukewarm attitude and was satisfied, sincerely praising him. Chapter 125 The Manor 2. Seeing this, Changshan quickly led the couple to the cowshed. Ju Ying thought it would be dirty and messy inside, but she was surprised to find it neat and tidy. Except for the lack of modern facilities, it was as good as a modern farm. Although the ground in the shed was not made of cement, it was still paved with stone. The ground was covered with straw, and some lime powder was also sprinkled on it to disinfect and dispel moisture. The key was that there was no other animal smell besides the smell of dry grass, and this was rare. When Jiyu Chungrue came in, he observed the cow's health. He did not expect to find 2 sick bulls, which looked like they were injured. He called over a worker who was cleaning the shed and asked, "What's going on with these 2 bulls? Were they fighting?" "Yes, they did fight. I didn't expect them to go into heat suddenly, and since they didn't have the time to breed, so," the employee said with a sheepish smile. "Then inform the doctor here to treat it quickly. Look at the wound, it's starting to rot. If you don't treat it soon, they will be dead." Jiyu Chungrue pointed at the wounds. This is indeed our negligence. Well, go and find a doctor now." The employee's face turned pale. "Yes, go." Jiyu Chungrue waved his hand and checked the rest. He was pretty satisfied with the results. They went to the sheep pen after that. The environment was similar, but more sheep were injured. Fortunately, they were all treated quickly, and the overall situation was decent. After the 2 walked around, they saw Uncle Nyan sitting on the side and directing the grass cutting. Ju Ying came forward and asked, "Uncle Nyan, can I have a word with you?" Uncle Nyan nodded, then brought them into his small house. "Have a seat. It's a little shabby, but don't mind it." "You're welcome. Have you been living here all this time?" Ju Ying asked in surprise as she looked at the tiny house of less than 10 square meters. "I'm just an old bachelor, so it's fine as long as I have a place to stay. I don't have many needs." Uncle Nyan nodded. "You've worked hard, and living in a more comfortable environment is better. It's freezing now, so construction work can't start. When spring comes next year, we'll build a row of dormitories nearby so whoever is tired can have a place to stay." "That's nice. This way, they'll be able to enjoy a good life even when they're on duty at night." The old man nodded and said. At the same time, the way he looked at them also turned more friendly. "Then it's decided. Please take care of it and see where it is more convenient to build. We'll start work after spring." "All right, leave it to me. But how do you plan to build it? How big a place is your estimate?" "The single dormitory being the size of this house is enough. If they wanted to settle down here, they could inform us in advance, and we would build them according to their family's population. However, we will have to make it clear in advance that it could only be their immediate family, which means it only includes the husband, wife, and child. Moreover, they have to guarantee to work at the manor. For a single person like you who has lived here for a long time, I was thinking of a place with an inner and outer room. In terms of size, it should be about 2.5 times the size of this house, and that should be enough." Uncle Nyan replied, "It doesn't need to be that big. A small outer room will do, as we just need a place for our guests. It's about the same. So, just take my suggestion." The old man didn't say anything else. After that, Ju Ying learned about the overall situation of the manor from Chang Shun and Uncle Nyan, while Jiyu Chungrue went out to find the doctor. He wanted to know the cattle's physical condition. On the other hand, he also wanted to exchange his experiences as a doctor. In the end, Jiyu Chungrue told the doctor the formula for traditional disinfection and sterilization. He suggested the doctor spray it in the sheds from time to time to prevent wounds from getting infected again. Chapter 126 The Manor, 3. At the same time, Ju Ying also learned that the main output of this manor was cattle and sheep. Although more than 100 acres of fertile land could grow wheat, millet, soybeans, and other grains, nothing was left after feeding the people in the manor and the livestock. If the year's harvest were terrible, they would need to buy some from outside to supplement the livestock feed. When Chang Shun saw them out, the couple went to the fields to look around. The wheat was growing well, but there were many cracks in the ground, and the legs of their pants had turned white. "Uncle Chang, isn't this place a little too dry?" Ju Ying couldn't help but frown. "It's a little dry. In previous years, there were already 2 rounds of rain and snow at this time. However, there was only one huge rain this year, barely wetting the ground. So, the land is naturally dried. However, there is no need to worry too much as the wheat is hibernating now. Even if it doesn't snow before the new year, it wouldn't have much impact once we watered it in spring and spread enough fertilizer. That's good, I'll have to trouble you with that. Ju Ying nodded. However, Jiyu Chungrui felt that this was inappropriate. It would be too late to remedy the situation then, and the harvest would definitely decrease. However, the weather was so cold that it was unrealistic to water them. It seemed that he had to water them enough before winter came. By the way, do you two want to renovate the main courtyard? Chang Shun asked when he saw the courtyard house not far away. Jiyu Chungrui looked at Ju Ying after hearing that. To be honest, he felt a little uncomfortable since Miss Chiao had lived in that courtyard for a long time. But ultimately, he left this decision to Ju Ying. Let's go and take a look, Ju Ying said hesitantly. Well, decide then. After that, the three of them went to the courtyard house. Jiyu Chungrui and Chang Shun went to the house to understand the manner and asked him to give them a list of who would stay and who would leave. They would have to sign a long-term labor contract tomorrow if they stayed. Ju Ying walked around the courtyard. Obviously, the courtyard was often occupied, and it was well taken care of. Unexpectedly, she found a storage room in the east wing of the main courtyard. Most things inside were cloth-related, and there was gorgeous silk with all kinds of cotton and sackcloth. She found a box of silver ingots and some broken silver pieces in the corner. She didn't count them and just put them into her interspace. Then, she carefully looked around and soon found a small cellar near the small courtyard kitchen. It was mainly filled with various tonics, red dates, lotus seeds, longans, and white fungus. As for the central kitchen, she knew that it must have been ransacked after looking at the broken porcelain pieces on the floor and the open cabinet door. She didn't bother to look there. After she was done, she returned to the main hall. I think this courtyard is well maintained. The main thing we need to do is to renovate the 3 rooms in the main courtyard. Would you like to do it yourselves? Or do you want me to arrange for someone to do it? Chang Shun stood up and asked. Well, do it ourselves at the beginning of spring. During this time, you can just find someone to come over every 3 to 5 days to help clean it up. Also, I want the security to be tightened up. Don't let anyone take anything away from the courtyard. After Ju Ying finished speaking, she handed him 2 pieces of silver. Don't worry. I'll do a good job. Chang Shun received the silver and smiled as he nodded repeatedly. All right, I'll leave this place to you. Do your best. We'll officially appoint you as the butler here if we see that you are capable. Thank you for your kind words, Master. It's getting late, and we should go back. If you need anything, you can come to Dongxing Restaurant or Dr. Gus House in Shenghe Village to find us. Chapter 127 Trampling on Her Dignity. Dr. Jiyu. Chang Shun was stunned for a moment. He sized Jiyu Chungrui up thoughtfully and continued, I wondered why you looked so familiar. I didn't expect you to be that Dr. Jiyu. Yes, if you need anything, just say the word. We're family now. Jiyu Chungrui smiled and nodded. Yes, I will. Then I will leave you to your work. It's getting late, so we'll go back now. Ju Ying said her goodbyes, and the two walked out. All right, take care, you two. Chang Shun stood up and sent them out of the manor after that. Then, he turned back, weighing the silver in his hand before happily walking back. In the evening, after the couple returned home, Ju Ying told Jiyu Chungrui about the warehouse she found in the manor. I didn't expect that there would still be things left behind after the house was ransacked. Maybe they didn't take it because it was too heavy. Don't forget that the main house's decorations, calligraphy, and paintings are all gone. That's true, but at least we won't have to buy fabric for the next 3 years. Yeah, please help me make another undershirt when you have time. Big brother Ju took the previous one, and I don't have enough to change into. Alright, I'll make 2 more sets this time. As soon as Ju Ying's words fell, a zhuang barked twice. Jiyu Chungrui immediately turned around and walked out. Seeing it was Jiyu Chengshi, he paused for a moment before greeting him. It's you. Do come in quickly. Third brother, Jiyu Chengshi greeted and walked in. However, the previously talkative boy had become somewhat reserved. Jiyu Chungrui took a few green bean cakes and handed them to him. What's going on? You look like a frosted eggplant, wilted, too. Do you know about the Chow family that got raided? Of course. I learned about it yesterday. Isn't this a good thing for the Jiyu family? It's a good thing. As a result, Uncle and my father want to resume their old business. However, the family did not have enough money to buy a boat, so they thought of marrying sixth sister off. Sixth sister? But Jiyu Zicheong, Mrs. Huang's daughter, hasn't reached marriageable age. Ju Ying exclaimed in surprise. Yes, Aunt Huang disagrees since she's still 5 months away. She suggested that since fourth and fifth sisters were already of age, they should be the ones getting married. There was almost a fight happening at home, so I escaped. Who are they marrying our sixth sister to? Jiyu Chungrui asked, deep in thought. Mrs. Huang would not have had such a big reaction if her daughter's marriage partner were decent. Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yarrow wouldn't let go of a good marriage partner either, so it could be seen that this wasn't an ideal marriage partner. It's Uncle Mi, who was in the bean sprout business with father. I heard he's turning 30 this year, and sixth sister is marrying him as his second wife. His ex-wife also left behind a son and a daughter. The older daughter is already 8 years old, while the younger son is already 6. Isn't this just trampling on her dignity? Ju Ying was speechless. A young girl who hadn't reached marriageable age was marrying an old man and becoming the stepmother of 2 children. No sane person would be willing to do so. Jiyu Chengshi nodded his head in agreement. Then, he picked up the green bean cake and gobbled it up. Jiyu Chungrui was silent before asking, how many days have you not eaten? You look like you are starving. Don't mention it. Ever since the incident, the food reserve at home has been plummeting. I've been staying hungry for a long time. Jiyu Chengshi said as he ate, stretching his neck from time to swallow in big gulps. Ju Ying quickly poured him a glass of water. Eat slowly. No one will snatch them from you. Thank you, third sister-in-law. Jiyu Chengshi thanked her as he took the glass of water and drank it in 2 gulps. Seeing this, Ju Ying shook her head and went to the kitchen to boil 5 eggs for him. She took a pound of braised dried tofu from her interspace and gave it to him. Have this to line your stomach for the time being. I will start cooking now, so you can eat with us tonight. Chapter 128 discussing Jiyu Chengshi shook his head. No, it's okay. I can hold on for 2 days with the food you gave me. If they know him here, they might come after you. Oh right, uncle and father's injuries have almost recovered, so don't go there for the next few days. Eat your food. You're still young, yet already this cunning. We know what we're doing. After Jiyu Chungrui finished speaking, he helped him peel some eggs and decided not to go over if he could. After eating some eggs, Jiyu Chengshi ate 2 more pieces of dried tofu and quietly returned with the food when the sky turned dark. After dinner, the 2 soaked some soybeans and braised more pig's trotters before entering the interspace. They finished whatever work was left in the interspace, and Jiyu Chungrui returned to his room to draft an employment contract. It emphasized their benefits and, of course, their responsibilities. After he was done, he made 60 copies with a brush. Ju Ying took out the cloth she took and made 2 sets of undergarments and quilt covers, just in case. After they were done, they went out of the interspace and fell asleep. Ju Ying and Da Hua continued to make tofu and dried yuba over the next few days. Jiyu Chungrui began to make house visits as a doctor, but he took some time off to go to the manor to sign the contracts. From the manor, only Chang Shun and a few others who planned to stay in the manor for an extended period of time signed the rest of the agreement. As for the people in the livestock area, they all signed the contract. At the same time, he would also go to his restaurant from time to supervise the ongoing renovation. One day, Jiyu Chungrui had just left the restaurant when he heard someone calling him. He turned around and saw Dr. Luo. So, he greeted, Dr. Luo, you're not busy today? It's all right. Recently, the government has been selling the Chow family's shop, and this old man was considering moving to another place. The place where I was is no longer suitable. Dr. Luo sighed and said, You've taken a fancy to the Chow family's previous clinic, right? Did you get it? Dr. Luo shook his head and said, "Don't mention it. That shop is too big, and it even has a big courtyard. The money I have on me is limited, so I really can't take out so much in a short time." "Oh, what's the price for the shop?" Dr. Luo stretched out a finger and said, "All empty inside, costing 1,000 taels of silver. Adding to the renovation and herbs needed to fill the place, I don't think I can pay for it, and it seems that I can only renovate my old clinic. It's indeed quite expensive." Jiyu Chungrue replied thoughtfully. To be honest, he also wanted a nice clinic. It was not a good thing to be a house doctor all the time, and this was an excellent opportunity. He decided to return home and discuss it with Ju Ying. After returning home, Jiyu Chungrue told Ju Ying about the matter. "Babe, what do you think about Dr. Luo and me being partners in opening a clinic? If you think it's okay, then do it. It's a good idea to have a clinic too." Ju Ying replied without hesitation. She knew that although Jiyu Chungrue had learned many other skills, his favorite was still medicine. She hoped he could display his strengths, live his own life, and create his own world. "Thanks, babe." Jiyu Chungrue went forward to hug and kiss her on the cheek. "You're welcome. But you have to remember your main task." Ju Ying kissed him back and reminded him. "I know. I'm here to accompany my wife, and I remember this clearly." After Jiyu Chungrue finished speaking, he looked at her face, which was becoming more and more similar to her face in her previous life. He could not help but hold his breath. At the same time, her eyes darkened as he looked at her. However, when they remembered their current age, he could only hug her tightly and say, "What do you want to eat tonight? I'll make it." Chapter 129. Visiting the grill you make is better than mine. So let's have grilled potatoes and chicken today. Ju Ying pondered for a moment and decided. "All right, I'll do it in the interspace. No problem, I'll just finish up the pig offal," Ju Ying said, and the two of them locked up and entered her space. When she went to get the pig offal, she realized that she had been using her existing stock in her interspace all this time, and it was almost gone. She needed to talk to Brother Tian as soon as possible to decide whether he would follow them. The following day, Jiyu Chungrue brought 500 taels of silver with him and Tian Jiawang to town. As soon as he left, Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yarrow came to visit, but they were so frightened by Zhuang that they stood at the door and didn't dare to take another step forward. Ju Ying watched from the kitchen and didn't make a sound. She hoped Zhuang could scare them away so they wouldn't come here again. Unfortunately, her wish soon fell through because Mrs. Liu loudly called out her name. Ju Ying had to put down her work and said to Diehua, "You can try to sift the beans. If it doesn't work, turn off the fire." "I know, Aunt Jiyu." Diehua replied, eager to try. "Be careful, and don't burn yourself." After Ju Ying finished speaking, she turned around and walked out. She stepped forward to stop Zhuang and said, "Aunt Liu, second aunt, it seems you are quite free to come over. Come in and have a seat." "How can you say that? I'm your stepmother. How can you call me aunt?" Mrs. Liu's face darkened. "That's right, Ju Ying. You should call her mom, or at the very least, you should call her mother." Mrs. Yarrow echoed. "Mother? I never recognized you as my mother. Father and the patriarch both know this." Ju Ying's expression straightened as she continued, "If you're here to visit, I can invite you for a cup of tea. But if you're here looking for trouble, I won't entertain you." After saying that, she let go of Zhuang, who immediately jumped and tried to bite them. If it weren't for the chain around him, he would have pounced on them and bit their necks. Luckily, this was enough to scare the two so much that they ran out of the courtyard screaming. "Ha ha ha," the satisfying laughter of sixth Aunt Jiyu sounded. She quipped, "My little third sister-in-law and seventh sister-in-law's skin is sure thick. You don't have the grace to raise her or even give her a decent upbringing. On the contrary, you bullied her and almost took their lives. Why should she ever acknowledge you as her mother? You sure are still in your dreams. Do they really think you two are still the same prestigious people you were? Oh, sixth aunt, you are here. Do come in for a seat." Ju Ying came out and greeted her enthusiastically. No. You've been so busy, so I won't give you any trouble. 6th Aunt Ji shook her head. You aren't Ju Ying. Who are you? Mrs. Liu pointed at Ju Ying and questioned her. Mrs. Yarrow accused. Yes, Ju Ying was a timid and weak girl who never dared to speak loudly. Look at you. Which part of you is like her? So, you're here to frame me today. Ju Ying's eyes turned cold as she stepped forward. What do you mean by framing? You're clearly a completely different person from before, so why shouldn't we say what we observed? Mrs. Liu shouted in panic. However, she took 2 steps back as if she was facing something scary. Is that so? Didn't you behave like a timid cat before the princess? I heard you're also known as a gentle and virtuous lady. But look at you now. To put it bluntly, you are nothing but a crude woman now. If you don't believe me, you can ask your relatives and friends in the capital. Who would have thought that you would become like this? Ju Ying shook her head and said regretfully. Chapter 130 Gossip. That's right. Which part of them looks like a noble wife? She's not much better than a village woman. 6th Aunt Ji agreed with a nod. No, she shook her head. They are less than a village woman. At least us village women don't torture people to death. You, Mrs. Liu looked at 6th Aunt Ji with anger. However, 6th Aunt Ji ignored her and looked at Ju Ying. Silly girl, hurry up and go back. To deal with people like them, you should be more assertive and shameless than they are. Otherwise, you'll definitely be bullied to the point where you won't even be able to eat. Thank you for your advice, 6th Aunt. Since you're here, come on in and have a chat. After Ju Ying finished speaking, she pulled her into the courtyard. It wasn't me who, 6th Aunt Ji still wanted to say something, but Ju Ying interrupted her. Come on, you haven't been to our house before, so how can you leave without coming in? Hearing that, 6th Aunt Gus' wife did not struggle anymore and happily followed her into the house. Mrs. Liu saw that Ju Ying had left them hanging here, getting so angry that she speechlessly pointed at her and couldn't even say a complete sentence. Sister-in-law, I think we should go back. Mrs. Yarrow pulled down her hand. Although she was angry, she could see Ju Ying didn't take them seriously. So what if they make a fuss? At most, both sides would just be the joke of the village. Are we just going to let her off like this? Mrs. Liu said unwillingly. Then what can you do? I think it's better to let our husband come and find Jiyu Chungrue. Mrs. Yarrow pursed her lips. To tell the truth, she looked down on Mrs. Liu. After so many years of hard work, she finally became the main wife but couldn't even outplay a youngling. What a stupid woman. She thought of Mrs. Huang, who had been making trouble for the past 2 days, and her face immediately sank. After that, she didn't pay her any more attention and turned around to return home. When Mrs. Liu saw this, she turned her head and glanced at Zhuang, squatting at the door and staring at her. She immediately lifted her legs and trotted after Mrs. Yarrow. 6th Aunt Ji, on the other hand, was welcomed into Ju Ying's home and given a cup of sugary drink. She also grabbed half a plate of fried beans from yesterday and handed it to her. 6th Aunt, try it and see if it's to your liking. Fried food will always be delicious, said 6th Aunt Ji with a smile. Then, she took one and popped it into her mouth. After swallowing it, she said in surprise, "Oh, yes. It's crunchy, fragrant, and really delicious. But, it's a little salty. It's a little salty, but it's perfect for tea snacks or with alcohol." 6th Aunt Ji paused before nodding. That's true. After that, the two of them ate and drank while they chatted. Ju Ying also learned a lot about the situation in the village from 6th Aunt Ji. For example, widow Hua's daughter, Chun Hong, seems to have fallen in love with Jiyu Chungye. She went up to Mrs. Liu a few times in the last few days to get closer to her, but Mrs. Liu never paid her any attention. Another was that the heir of the patriarch's family had started finding candidates for marriage, but he had gone through a few families and had no intention of settling. Finally, 6th Aunt Ji turned around to look outside, ensuring that Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yarrow had left. She then looked at Ju Ying with a mysterious expression and asked, "Do you know why they are here today?" "What do you mean?" Ju Ying asked curiously. "Have you heard about the fight between their family members these past 2 days?" I briefly heard they had found a marriage partner for their sixth daughter, Jiyu Zichong. Ju Ying mentioned. Yeah, but Mrs. Huang doesn't agree to this marriage, and they've been making a fuss. It was the old madam who decided to ask everyone to gather funds so that Jiyu Zichong wouldn't need to marry if they gathered enough. Then it should be Mrs. Huang coming here. Why are they the ones instead? Ju Ying paused before asking in astonishment, they can't be thinking of cutting off Mrs. Huang's source of income, right? Chapter 131 Collaboration. I'm 80% sure. Think about it, you will have to return the money you borrowed eventually, but it's not the same for your daughter's dowry. Once that money enters their family, it will belong to them. Sixth Aunt Jiyu nodded and smiled in response. They have so many twists and turns in their heads. That's why I am saying you must be on guard against them. Don't let them trick you, otherwise, the life you've worked so hard to get will return to how it was before. Thank you for your advice, Sixth Aunt Jiyu. Come over and chat with us whenever you are free, you can give us more advice that way. It's fine as long as you don't find me talkative. No one is perfect. As long as you are kind, anyone will be friends with you. Yes, that's it. The most important thing about someone else is whether they are kind or not. Sixth Aunt Jiyu agreed with a nod. The two of them chatted for a while longer, and Sixth Aunt Jiyu got up to leave after another drink. Ju Ying didn't persuade her to stay. Instead, she packed a bag of fried beans in oil paper and accompanied her out. She returned to the kitchen and got busy after that. On the other hand, Jiyu Chungrui arrived in town and first went to the restaurant to look. He then turned around and went to Dr. Luo's clinic. Dr. Luo, who was picking out medicine, was stunned when he saw him. Jiyu, you're here. Take a seat and wait for me. I'll be done in a minute. After he finished speaking, he continued to sort out some medicine. After sending 2 customers away, he walked to Jiyu Chungrui, sitting on a chair at the entrance, and said jokingly, bringing a medicine kit to our shop, are you planning on challenging us? I wouldn't dare. I came to find you today because I have some serious business to discuss. Serious business? Follow me then. Dr. Luo gave his helper a few instructions and then took him to the back. After he sat down, he poured him a glass of water and asked, tell me, what's the matter today? It's about the new clinic. A new clinic? Are you also planning to buy that place? If you don't have the money, I wouldn't have it either, said Jiyu Chungrui. What about your restaurant? Someone gave it to me, but don't tell anyone else. We are only telling the public that my wife is the manager there. When Dr. Luo heard that, he knew it was pretty complicated, so he didn't talk more about the restaurant. Instead, he smiled and said, so, you're here today to open a clinic together. It seems that you are as wise as you are old. But yes, the clinic over there is much bigger than this one, and you wouldn't be able to handle it alone. Although I'm not talented, I do have some skills. Wouldn't it be good for us to collaborate? Then how do you want us to collaborate? How much silver can you take out? Dr. Luo stretched his hand and said, 1,000 taels, this is all I have. Is another 500 from me enough? Dr. Luo looked at him in surprise and asked, can you really offer 500 taels? Yes, well split it 2 to 1. You get 2 shares, and I get 1. Dr. Luo looked at his solemn expression and fell into deep thought. Seeing this, Jiyu Chungrui did not disturb him. Instead, he warmed his hands and drank some water. After about a quarter of an hour, Dr. Luo slammed the table and decided, all right, but you have to listen to me in terms of management. You're more experienced and have a wider network. Of course, I'll listen to you. Then what are we waiting for? Let's hurry up and draft the contract, then go to the county office and buy the place. Otherwise, who knows who might take it? Dr. Luo immediately stood up and said. After that, he turned around to get a brush and ink. When Jiyu Chungrui returned home in the evening, he gave the contract to Ju Ying and said, the matter of the clinic has been settled. Keep this well. Ju Ying took it and directly threw it into the villa's study in her interspace. She then told him about Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yarrow's visit. Chapter 132 Rejection. Jiyu Chungrui was silent for a moment before he asked, They didn't say what they came for. With 6th Aunt Gu helping out, I didn't give them a chance to speak. That's good, ignore them. We won't be lending any money to anyone. If we can't reject them, just give them some tofu slices or dried yuba. I'm fine with it. I'm just afraid that they'll pester you non-stop. Gu Chungrui laughed and suggested, if we really can't say no, how about we buy some land from them? Buy land? That's right. Don't forget that they have 100 acres of land. If they want money, they can exchange their land for it. That's true, but don't reveal that we have that much money. Don't worry, we can buy a maximum of 6 acres of land with 50 taels of silver. That will be enough for us to plant some vegetables to supply our restaurant. All right, it's up to you then. Wash your hands, the food is ready. Ju Ying said as she turned around and went to the kitchen. On the other hand, after Jiyu Chengji and Jiyu Chengye returned home, Father Jiyu immediately stopped them. Chengji, Chengye, what did your uncle say? Can you borrow some silver from the oil mill? No, Uncle said the oil mill business isn't doing well this year. Besides the clan's expenses, the clan also needs a new boat, and they definitely won't lend it to us again. Jiyu Chengye shook his head. The problem is that most clan members are unhappy with us because of that boat. They don't support the patriarch to lend us any silver as well. Jiyu Chengji added. They're all a bunch of ingrates. Back when our family was in its prime, they basked in our glory too. Now, they are showing us this attitude when we need their help. Such a disappointment. Mrs. Liu said indignantly. You shut up. Father Jiyu replied in a bad mood. Although they had helped the clan in those years, it was only on the surface level, and they barely helped anyone on an individual level, at most, just slightly more than other villagers. However, they took their land back after they came back. In addition to Jiyu Chengru's incident and the shipwreck, there would definitely be many who had negative opinions about them. Their oil mill could only use ox carts or rent someone else's boat to transport oil after the shipwreck. How could they have any positive image of their family? Then what do we do now? Should we change our jobs? Our family really doesn't have enough income. Mrs. Liu wanted to say something but hesitated. The main issue was that there was little money left in the family. She didn't want to fork out any more of her personal savings, or else what would she provide for her children? Father Jiyu turned to look at her and asked, change my profession? Do you have any ideas? Take your time to think about it. There will be something. Can't you see that Chung Rui and his wife are selling tofu quite well? I recall that mother's snacks were delicious, as was second aunt's porridge. Why don't we open a small shop? Jiyu Chengye suddenly suggested. Eateries. It's fine if we make it for ourselves, but we'll be dead exhausted if we sell it. Mrs. Liu unhappily glared at him. Father Jiyu disagreed with his idea too. He didn't want others to think that he was a man who lived off his woman. Also, the issue was that selling eateries would never make a fortune. He had to find another way to buy a boat. However, on second thought, selling eateries would temporarily relieve their financial issues. He nodded and said, I think you and sister-in-law can give it a try. Didn't you manage a shop when you were in the capital? You can earn some pocket money this way. But darling, managing an eatery shop is dirty and tiring. How can we do that kind of work? Mrs. Liu said in horror. What do you mean that kind of work? Didn't you envy Chung Rui and his wife selling tofu? Do you think it's easy to grind beans and cook tofu every day? Father Jiyu snorted coldly at this point and reminded her, you used to think that cooking was difficult, but now you are used to it. Wouldn't it just be a thing to get used to? Chapter 133 Acceptance. Mrs. Liu's face turned red when she heard this, but she couldn't say anything to refute it. It's settled then. I'll try to rent a small shop in town. At least it's better than you guys fighting at home every day. Father Jiyu immediately decided. Then why not Mrs. Guo and Mrs. Sun go? They are more skilled at cooking than us. After hearing this, Father Jiyu looked at her deeply and said, so you're willing to carry water, gather firewood, and serve the whole family at home every day? Just go and try it for 2 days. I'll ask Mrs. Guo to try if you can't do it. When Mrs. Liu heard this, She immediately thought of her shoulder, which had been swollen for several days from carrying buckets of water over her shoulders. She immediately shrank and replied, "Oh, all right, I will give it a try." She then looked at Father Jiyu and suggested, "By the way, darling, Chungrui should be back by now. Do you want to go and look for him? Maybe he has some silver in his hands." "I'm not going. Don't you have any ideas about him?" Father Jiyu went back to his study after that. Previously, Jiyu Chungrui treated the two brothers' injuries and even gave them medicine for free. It would be worth quite a lot of money, and the young couple's small business couldn't even earn much. He wouldn't be able to get anything if he went now, and more importantly, he was too embarrassed to ask for anything else. Mrs. Liu still wanted to say something, but Jiyu Chengye's gaze stopped her. He knew well that although his father had rejected his third brother and his wife, Father Jiyu no longer had hostility toward them. If Mrs. Liu continued this, she would only cause trouble. The other family, who had been listening to the commotion outside, was disappointed when they heard the final verdict. Especially Mrs. Yarrow. She had wanted her brother-in-law to go over and avenge them, or at least, pester the pair of jinxes. Unfortunately, it ended with nothing. After that, she sighed and said to second Uncle Jiyu, "Big brother seems to be soft-hearted toward Chungrui now." Second Uncle Jiyu didn't reply. After all, they couldn't treat the young couple the same way they did in the past since they had saved their lives. Besides, they hadn't done anything unforgivable. "Darling, are we really going to open a shop in town?" Second aunt asked again. "There's nothing bad about it. After all, we still haven't bought a boat. Also, one of our family members will be giving birth soon in the new year, and there will be many places where we will need money. We can't always rely on this little bit of money, right?" But Mrs. Yarrow wanted to speak but stopped. Ultimately, she thought of her brother-in-law's reply and swallowed the words at the tip of her tongue. Since they were all working, why not do something in which she could make the decisions? At least the money would be in her hands if they fought over it. If it was someone else, with someone else between them, who knew if the other party would try to hide their profits? The next day, after Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yarrow knew they could not borrow money from others, they went to the town to rent a shop. Jiyu Chungrui waited for 2 days and was relieved when he did not see his father. In the blink of an eye, another 5 days had passed. The young couple's new restaurant in town had been renovated, and they went to check it out. The decorations were straightforward. They just removed the older decorations inside, brushed the main hall with white paint, and painted a group of cattle and sheep leisurely on pasture on the walls. The second floor was even more straightforward. After the white paint was applied, pictures of their signature dishes were pasted on the wall. This was an oil-painted draft printed by Jiyu Chungrui. Although it was not as clear as conventional photography, the colors were bright, and they could still make customers drool. Then, he had several paintings with plums, orchids, chrysanthemums, and bamboo. There were even lovely paintings of tools, chess, books, and others. Finally, there was the kitchen. The pots and pans were all replaced with white stones that were easy to clean, making them look clean and tidy. Chapter 134 Buying Labor. 1. What do the two bosses think? Are you satisfied? Zhong Daniu asked after they were done with the tour. Not bad. Who did you find to paint this? It's not half bad. Jiyu Chungrui asked. I discovered an academy scholar who is also a nephew in our clan. Because his family is poor, he will come out to do some work, such as writing letters, calligraphy, painting, and so on. This time, 2 big and 4 small paintings cost 10 taels of silver. That's reasonable, and it's worth the price. Help me pass on a message. Ask him to come over when he's free. I want him to draw something else. Sure. I'll thank you for your appreciation on his behalf. It's a total of 30 silver coins this time, right? Yes, only the stone slab and the painting are worth some money. Honestly, I've never seen this style of renovation before, but the way it turned out isn't bad. I think I will have to change my style more and can't just stick to the old way. Simplistic is elegant, easy, and true. Haha, you educated people sure have lively brains. Zhong Daniu was stunned for a moment before laughing out loud. After settling the bill, Zhong Danyu brought his men and left. Jiyu Chungrui turned his head. Babe, take a look and see if anything else needs to be changed. If there's nothing else, I'll get someone to move the tables and chairs that have been changed. No need. When you're on your way, ask if the bowls and plates have arrived. Also, it'll be 3 days before the pot and the signboard are ready. We have to find a fixed palace to provide us with smokeless coal. Jiyu Chungrui smacked his forehead. I forgot to tell you that I got to know a charcoal maker through Dr. Luo. I've already ordered £2,000, and it'll be here in 2 days. Then we're just short of workers. The backyard has been cleaned, so let's get some workers now. Alright, well head over after we're done here. After Jiyu Chungrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked out. Then, he went to the labor market and found a few people to help clean up. He also informed the porcelain shop and didn't expect all kinds of tableware to be delivered in less than 15 minutes. After Ju Ying checked them one by one, she made sure there were no defects and paid the bill. She was surprised that these porcelain pieces cost nearly 100 taels of silver. There was quite a difference in price between fine and coarse porcelain. After arranging everything in the restaurant, Ju Ying put all the plates and bowls into her interspace, washed them with the dishwasher, disinfected them, and then put them on the bowl rack. After that, the young couple found a labor dealer with manager Liu's recommendation. Ju Ying was shocked when she saw a ghost-like woman sitting in the room, but she quickly restrained her emotions and asked, "Are you Granny Ma?" "You're." The woman raised her head and sized them up. Seeing that they were dressed in ordinary clothes, she couldn't figure out their purpose for a moment. She frowned and hesitated to speak. "We were introduced by Uncle Liu from Hongyun Restaurant. We want to buy a few servants with till-death contracts," Ju Ying said. "So you're here from old Liu's recommendation. Please have a seat." When the woman heard this, her attitude immediately changed, and she greeted them with a smile. Ju Ying saw that she was about to pour them tea and stopped her. "Granny Ma, don't worry about it. We're not thirsty, so let's see who you have first." "No problem. What kind of people do you want to buy? Or rather, what kind of people do you want to use?" Granny Ma immediately put down her cup and walked over. "We want to open a restaurant, so we're looking for someone who can cook. It doesn't matter if they're male or female. Also, if there are young men available, we will buy 2 of them." Granny Ma chuckled when she heard that. "What a coincidence, I have had a group of new people here recently. I'll call them all over, and you can choose whoever you want." After that, she slowly hobbled to the backyard. Chapter 135 Buying Labor, 2. If it weren't for Uncle Liu's introduction, I would have thought we were at the wrong place. Jiyu Chungrui smiled and shook his head. Ju Ying rolled her eyes at him and said, "You know it very well, don't you? Television media left such a deep impression, after all." Jiyu Chungrui quickly raised his hands and said. After hearing what she said, she also thought of the pimps in most TV dramas who tried to solicit customers, especially the women who stood on the street in war movies. Soon, Granny Ma led a group of people in. There were men and women, young and old, and even babies. It seemed that Granny Ma was a good person. Otherwise, she wouldn't have kept a baby. Then, she realized something unusual. How could a labor dealer sell babies? Thus, she asked, "Granny Ma, what's the deal with them? Why are they bringing a baby with them?" "Don't mention it. One of them was pregnant 2 months ago, but I have to take them in no matter what. They are officially enslaved people." "Official slaves?" "Yes, from the south. The documents said they were illegal salt traders in their clan, and I don't know any more details." When Ju Ying heard this, she immediately remembered the Jiyu family's incident, and they seemed to have suffered the same fate of being exiled. Now that she thought about it, it was lucky that the Jiyu family was only raided and exiled. If they were made into officially enslaved people, they would never be able to see the light of day again. At the same time, Jiyu Chungrui also realized that and suddenly felt a wave of fear. The Ming dynasty's official slaves were servants used by the officers' families and were people who were lower than the general till-death contract servants. They were the same as slaves, animals, and people who were unimportant even if they died. The main takeaway was that they would be slaves for generations without any freedom other than an official special pardon. Are they all official slaves? Ju Ying asked after calming down. No, only this family of 3. The rest are not. That's good. Ju Ying stood up and glanced at the crowd. Regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, those who can cook, step forward. The cooking I'm talking about is not just cooking normally, you must at least have some unique skills. As soon as she finished speaking, only 2 women and a man stood out from the group. Is there no one else? Ju Ying asked again. Then, another man stood out from the crowd but was hesitant, and it was apparent that he was in a dilemma. What's wrong? Ju Ying pointed at him and asked, do you know how to cook or not? Yes, I was a chef before, but... You are hesitating about our employment, right? Tell me, where did you work as a chef? Jiyu Chungrue said. I was a chef in a prominent family in the capital before, but I was sold because I offended someone. We want to open a restaurant. Do you want to do it or not? Open a restaurant? The man's eyes immediately lit up. He didn't want to be a servant to a prominent family anymore. It would be fine if it were a harmonious family, but if it were a family with many disputes, he would have to live in fear every day for fear of being used by others. However, he feared his skills would be wasted if it was an average family. It would be best if he could enter a restaurant. Sure, but he'll have to bring my wife and children along. After that, he pulled out a woman and a 7 or 8-year-old boy from the crowd. All right, stand to the side first. Ju Ying glanced at the 2 of them and nodded after ensuring they were clean and tidy. With 2 men and 2 women, she didn't want to hire any more chefs. She went up and picked 3 neatly dressed young men and said, Granny Ma, just these few. Old Liu introduced you, so I won't waste my time haggling. The 3 women are worth 10 taels each, the 5 strong laborers are worth 12 taels each, and the child is worth 5 taels. At this point, Granny Ma counted with her fingers and concluded, 95 taels in total. Chapter 135 Signature Dish 1. Granny Ma, are you trying to do a one-time deal? If I remember correctly, a woman would only sell for 8 taels of silver at most, and only a young and beautiful virgin could be sold for 10 taels. Ju Ying said with a faint smile. The original her grew up with a group of servants. She couldn't guarantee anything else, but she was very clear about the price of buying labor. Well, you know, they are all people with skills, so, Granny Ma said with a smile. No matter how skilled they are, their age and physical condition are obvious. For Uncle Liu's sake, I won't haggle further. How about 90 taels? Granny Ma hesitated for a moment before nodding. All right, then 90 taels it is. If you need more in the future, you have to come to me. All right. After Ju Ying agreed, she immediately gave her 9 silver ingots. Granny Ma took them and weighed them in her hands. Then, she turned around and took out their indenture contracts. If you need anything in the future, just let me know so I can prepare for you in advance. I will. Ju Ying promised, and she took a group of people out of the labor dealer. First, she took them to a clothing shop and bought them 2 sets of ordinary clothes. At the same time, she bought a mattress for each of them, including the couple. After they came out, Ju Ying gave their contracts to Jiyu Chungrue and said, Rui, go to the officers to register them under us. Okay, I'll go to the restaurant to find you. Jiyu Chungrue answered and left with the contracts. As for Ju Ying, she took a group of people back to the restaurant and said, other than the main house, you can choose your room anywhere else in this courtyard. I'll give you 15 minutes to make your choice and gather back here. Yes, madam. The few of them immediately started discussing where they should stay. Ju Ying saw they were harmonious, so she didn't care about them anymore. Instead, she turned around and went to the kitchen. Since they were going to live here, she should prepare some food. They didn't have much firewood left, but the remaining wood from the renovation should be more than enough to burn for 3 to 5 days. There was no food or vegetables. She took out 50 pounds of black flour, 50 pounds of crushed rice, 10 pounds of millet, a bag of sorghum, and a bag of beans from her interspace. Also, there were cabbage, carrots, and some dried vegetables. She didn't have pots here yet, so she took out a set of 5 pots of different sizes from her interspace that she had stolen from the Chiao family's house. As for spices, she didn't take out any. Instead, she planned to give them some silver and let them buy it themselves. It could also be considered a test of their cooking skills. Then, she walked out and waited in the courtyard. After a while, the group of people came out of their living quarters and stood in a line, waiting for her orders. When Ju Ying saw this, she knew these people were probably trained and must have worked for a prominent family before. "All of you, tell me your names and what you are good at," she asked directly. The hesitating chef was the first to speak. "My name is Li Sheng, and I'm good at cooking. Stir-fried meat is my specialty. This is my wife." Ju Ying interrupted him. "Let her say it herself. She's here to work in a restaurant, so even if she lacks skills, she needs to be able to speak and talk to people. When a customer asks her something, she will have to answer the question clearly." When Ju Ying said this, she looked at the woman and said, "Will that be a problem?" No, I used to work in a sewing room and am good at cutting clothes. As for my name, it's a name that my master gave me in the past. Please give me a new name." The woman answered as she bowed. "Mistress, please give us a name." The others echoed. Even the little boy chimed in with the others. Chapter 137 Signature Dish 2. However, Ju Ying was not good at giving names, so she had to ask, "Don't you have names? If you have original names, can you keep them?" "My name is Fang Qing. I know some martial arts and was previously the coachman in my previous residence." At that moment, the strongest-looking young man spoke. "I am Zhao Cheng. Previously, I was in charge of my elderly master's food. I am good at making soup, especially herbal-type dishes." A male chef stood out and said, "Then why did you leave the residence?" Ju Ying asked curiously. Those who had served their elderly master usually had the benefit of seniority in their residence. Even if the elderly master didn't put them in an important position, he wouldn't sell them out. The man was stunned and replied, "Do you still remember the official slaves back there? I was in the same batch, sold after my previous master's family was in trouble." Ju Ying nodded and looked at the others, but they didn't speak up. After pondering for a moment, she pointed to the 2 young men and said, "Then you will follow your new master's surname. The older one will be called Jiyu Wen, and the younger one will be called Jiyu Wu. As for the little boy, you will follow your father's surname, Li, and I will give you a first name, Yu. I hope you'll be happy with this." "Thank you for the name, madam," the 3 of them said at the same time. Jiyu Wen then introduced himself. "I'm Jiyu Wen, and I've learned how to write from a steward in a manor for a few years. As for what I'm good at, it's probably running fast. I'm Jiyu Wu, a slave. I was born into a peasant family. If I have to say something I'm good at, it would be being diligent." Ju Ying nodded. Jiyu Wen looked younger than Jiyu Wu, but she could tell that Jiyu Wen was smarter than Jiyu Wu. Then, she looked at the 3 women with a troubled expression and said, "Mrs. Li, I'll just call you Mrs. Li and use your old name. As for the 2 of you, the older one will be called Chun Niang, and the younger one will be called Chou Niang. I'm Chun Niang. I'm good at making desserts and best at making silver silk rolls. I, Chou Niang, have opened a shop before. I'm best at making dumplings, rolling noodles, and stir-frying vegetables." Chun Niang was fair and clean, while Chou Niang was dark and thin. After remembering their characteristics, she nodded and said, "Is there anything else anyone wants to add? If you do, say it as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame me for not giving you face when things get out of hand in the future." Everyone looked at each other for a moment, but no one spoke again. "Let's confirm again. Is there really no one?" Everyone shook their heads. "Very good. In that case, I hope that everyone will work hard together in the future and run the restaurant well together. Whoever performs outstandingly, I can return your freedom to you in 10 years. Of course, if you perform well and don't want to leave, I can take care of you in your old age. Is there anything else you want to add?" Ju Ying asked after she finished. "Will mistress really give us our freedom?" Li Sheng asked nervously. Mrs. Li also looked at her expectantly after hearing that. Although they didn't have much hope, their son was still young, and they had hoped for him to lead a normal life. I'm a person of my word, and I'll naturally fulfill my promise to you. Everyone can be a witness to each other. Ju Ying raised her hand and said, "Thank you, mistress." When Li Sheng heard this, he and his son, Li Yu, knelt with a plop. "All right, it's getting late, and it would be best if you guys cleaned up. I prepared some grains and vegetables in the kitchen in advance. Tomorrow, everyone will show off your skills, and I will start to assign tasks according to your skills. Of course, I will also point out your shortcomings. May I ask what kind of special restaurant mistress wants to open?" Zhao Cheng asked curiously. "We'll have hot pot and barbecue as the main dishes, with some minor side dishes. So, you must bring out your unique skills tomorrow so that I can set the menu." After Ju Ying finished speaking, she gave Zhao Cheng 5 taels of silver and said, "If you lack anything, you can prepare it yourself, and just record the bill." Chapter 138 Liu's Dessert. Thank you for your trust, mistress. We will do our best. Zhao Cheng bent over and picked the silver ingots up with both hands. "You guys go ahead. We won't stay here tonight, so you guys close the doors and windows." Ju Ying waved her hand. After that, she went to the blacksmith's shop to ensure the work could be completed on time. Then, she returned to the restaurant and happened to meet Jiyu Chungrui on the way. After Ju Ying took the indenture contracts from him, the two discussed something and then separated ways again. Afterward, Jiyu Chungrui went directly to the new clinic, while Ju Ying returned to the village. When she passed the grocery store, she remembered that there was no more salt brine at home, so she went in and bought a pound. After she came out, she heard Jiyu Cheng's familiar voice near her. She listened to his voice, shouting and selling his goods. She walked over curiously and didn't expect to see Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yarrow selling desserts while Jiyu Chengxi invited customers to the entrance. She raised her head and looked at the shop's signboard, Liu's Desserts. She stood and found that they were still selling high-end desserts, such as jujube paste shortbread and pine nut lily pastry. But business wasn't good, as not many people bought them. She shook her head, turned around, and walked back. Few people would be willing to buy such high-end snacks in this small town and in such a small shop. On the way, she collected 2 sets of fresh pig offal. After returning home, she began to sift through some soybeans, but this time she only sifted enough for Hongyun restaurant. As for dried yuba, since the recipe had been given out, it was time to stop making it. Thinking of this, she took 100 copper and went next door. When she saw Sister Tian making clothes in the courtyard, she greeted her. "Sister Tian, you are busy today." "Oh, you are here. Come in and have a seat." Sister Tian invited her in as she rolled up the cloth and placed it into a bamboo basket. "Oh, there's no need, you can continue your work as it's just a matter of a few words." After Ju Ying said that, she handed her the string of copper coins. "This is for Da Hua's salary. I've sold the yub making process, and Da Hua doesn't have to come to make more. Why did you sell it? I heard that yuba is selling nicely and quickly. Did someone bully you?" "No, I promised to help someone run a restaurant, so I don't have time to do it." "I see. It's good to have a fixed job." Sister Tian paused for a moment at this point before continuing. "Da Hua hasn't worked for a month yet. I can't accept this money." "Sister Tian, just take it. She's quite capable, and we don't want to dampen her enthusiasm. We might need her help in the future." Ju Ying said hurriedly. "By the way, when Brother Tian comes back tonight, can you tell him to come over? We have something to talk to him about." "Sure, I'll tell him when the time comes. Then I'll go back now. Don't you want to stay and have a chat?" "Thank you, but I'll come again when I'm free." After Ju Ying finished speaking, she turned around and went home. In the evening, Qian Zhuang and Jiyu Erjiang returned with the ox cart, but they didn't come back with many soybeans. After unloading the cart, Qian Zhuang said, "Mrs. Jiyu, we've come to an end. We really are unable to collect any more soybeans in this area. It's not worth it with another increment of 1 copper per pound, and you guys might as well buy it from the shop. There's still work to do, but you won't be collecting soybeans. You will collect carrots, cabbages, and winter melons from tomorrow onwards." Also, if you encounter a carrot with a red heart, you must buy them. You'll transport it directly to the original Dongshan restaurant when the time comes. I'll get someone to settle the bill for you. Remember, the vegetables you collect must be fresh. Don't take the frozen ones. If I'm satisfied with your performance, this job will be permanently yours in the future. You guys are going to open a restaurant. Did you strike gold? Qian Zhuang asked in astonishment. Jiyu Erjiang was also so shocked that his jaw almost fell to the ground. Chapter 139 Recruiting. No, we didn't strike gold. Don't I have good cooking skills? Someone took a fancy to my skills and wanted to hire me to be a restaurant manager. I thought I could earn more there and wouldn't be as tired, so I agreed to their offer. Zhu Ying replied with a smile. That's still a good thing. Such a big restaurant manager would earn at least 5 taels of silver a month. Jiyu Erjiang said with an envious look. Right. In the future, us brothers will follow you two around. You can't just leave us alone. Qian Zhuang nodded in agreement. Recently, because they had been going out to collect soybeans every day, the villagers noticed they had started to work seriously and had begun to give off a better impression. There were even people who had started to matchmake them. Although they were all widows or women with issues, it was a good start. If they could continue to work steadily, it wouldn't be impossible for them to marry a wife they liked. I'll repeat the same thing. As long as you do your best, we'll definitely continue to hire you. Alright, we can rest assured with your words. We'll start collecting vegetables from tomorrow onwards. Remember to send them to the original Dongxing restaurant. It doesn't have a new signboard yet. Alright, we'll be leaving then. Do you guys still have enough money on you? Yes, it's enough to last 2 more days. Qian Zhuang said his goodbyes and walked out with Jiyu Erjiang. After they left, Zhu Ying put the 20 pounds of soybeans into her interspace and went into the kitchen to start cooking. After Jiyu Chungrui returned, the two had just placed food on the table when Tian Jiawang came over. When he saw them eating, he paused for a moment before turning to leave. Jiyu Chungrui quickly called out to him. Brother Tian, since you're here, let's eat together. We can have a drink together too. Yes. You boys eat first while I go to the kitchen to finish cooking. Zhu Ying told them as she turned around and returned to the kitchen. Tonight's dishes were pretty delicious. There was a plate of twice-fried pork, a plate of tofu with cabbage, a plate of cold mixed shredded tofu salad, and millet porridge with black steamed buns. After that, she fried a plate of salted peanuts and another plate of scrambled eggs with scallions. After returning, although the 3 of them were sitting at the same table, Zhu Ying did not participate in the drinking. She quickly finished eating and retreated to the side. After 3 glasses of alcohol, Tian Jiawang looked at Zhu Ying and said, Sister-in-law, my sister said you were looking for me. Is there something you need? There's something, but it's better if Chungrui tells you, said Zhu Ying. Jiyu Chungrui told him why they were stopping their current business, then said, So, I'm afraid that I can't supply you with more goods when we are busy. However, the restaurant is still short of staff. I wonder if you would like to come over. But I don't know how to help out in a restaurant. What do you mean? It's relatively easier to learn to make skewers. If you are willing to come over, you will be in charge of making skewers. Yes, the meat for skewers is marinated beforehand, and the ingredients are also prepared in advance. You just have to control the heat well. Zhu Ying agreed. Can I really give it a try? Sure, if you can stay, you'll get 1 silver a month. Will you still be able to supply for tomorrow? I have a few regular customers, so I must inform them tomorrow. Alright, we will supply you 1 more day. Okay, thank you for your hard work. It's a matter of mutual benefit. After Zhu Ying finished speaking, she went to the kitchen to make some braised intestines and dried tofu. Tian Jiawang finished his meal and went home to tell his sister about the matter. He said, Big sister, you should grow fewer bean sprouts from now on, as there's only a limited amount of time I have to send them out to a few regular customers. This is great news. Not only will your income stabilize, but you also don't need to be exposed to the elements while working. You don't have to worry about the bean sprouts. I can deliver them. Big sister Tian said happily. Maybe it's better if I go. I can, don't worry. I can do it. You have to work hard when you go there. This way, you might be able to land a wife in half a year. Alright, if it's too hard to go over for the delivery, you better not force yourself. I know. Chapter 133. Years the next day, after Tian Jiawang collected the goods, Ju Ying and her husband went to town with him. After they parted ways in town, the couple went to their restaurant. Jiyu Chungrui got to know everyone and then went to his clinic. Ju Ying stayed behind and began to check everyone's dishes. When she arrived at the kitchen, she looked at the ingredients they had bought. The meat was fresh, and one could tell it was good quality meat. The seasonings were all prepared, and she also found some medicinal herbs she had never thought of, such as rhizome and chuanxiong. These were great tonic herbs. Zhao Cheng, did you buy the herbs? She asked. Yes, I want to make a nourishing herbal soup today. I will use chicken, duck, cuttlefish, goose, pig's belly, pork ribs, and other tonic herbs. This soup is suitable for the elderly, pregnant women, and those with weak bodies. Zhao Cheng added. It will probably take a lot of effort, so go ahead and start. After Ju Ying finished speaking, she looked at the crowd and said, start when your ingredients are ready. Make everything yourselves as I want to test your skills. Yes, mistress, everyone responded and turned around, each finding their own ingredients and busying themselves. Mrs. Li, on the other hand, helped to start the fire. As for the three young men, she sent them out to find a store selling large quantities of chili. This was the most important matter in their restaurant's opening, and it had to be settled as soon as possible. After that, Ju Ying walked over to Li Yu, sitting on a small bench in the courtyard and practicing writing on the ground. She said, little fellow, you can read. Yes, mistress. I can read, but not much. My father and mother taught me what I know. Li Yu quickly stood up and bowed. There's no need to be so polite. Just sit down. Ju Ying pulled him to sit down, and she looked down at the words he was practicing. They were all simple surnames of people. For example, Ju, Wang, He, Hua, Sha. Do your father and mother know many words? She asked. I'm not sure, but my father can write down all the commonly used names. My mother, on the other hand, is a little lacking. Do you like to read? I like it. When I was in a residence, I envied Brother Dongzi, who was a study attendant. He learned many words from the young master. Is that so? How about I send you to school? I'll give you 3 years, and if you can get a recommendation letter from the headmaster after 3 years, I'll give you freedom and let you continue your studies. Really? Li Yu was overjoyed, but he shook his head. No, I'm a servant, I have to work. How much work can you do? At most, you will be keeping the fire from burning out. How about this? When you come home, you can help with the work while studying, and I won't give you a monthly salary. How about it? Li Yu was both surprised and delighted, not knowing what to say for a moment. Then I'll discuss it with my father, he mumbled. After hearing her suggestion, he got up and ran into the kitchen. Li Yu excitedly told Li Sheng about Ju Ying's offer. After Li Sheng heard this, he was so shocked that he almost cut his finger off. When he saw Ju Ying, who followed Li Yu in with a smile, he asked in disbelief, Mistress, is what he said true? Of course, he's still young and can't do much. It's better to let him study for 3 years, and if the headmaster can recommend him to take the scholar's exam, I'll let him take it. If he doesn't get that recommendation, he'll be able to return to the restaurant to help with his writing and reading skills. But, of course, his monthly salary will be gone while he studies. Of course. Thank you, mistress. Thank you so much. You've given him a way out. Li Sheng nodded repeatedly. At the same time, he bent his waist lower and lower, almost kneeling down. His wife, Mrs. Li, pulled Li Yu down to their knees and said, Thank you for your kindness, mistress. Chapter 141. Taste testing. Mrs. Li, please get up. As I've said before, anything is possible as long as you guys do your best. Ju Ying said as she helped her up. Mistress, you are too benevolent. This servant will definitely do a good job. Chun Niang immediately replied. She wasn't young anymore, and she wasn't a free person. The possibility of getting married was almost zero, so it was better to show her loyalty early so that she could have a place to retire. Yes, we will definitely do a good job. Everyone immediately echoed. At the same time, their faces were filled with joy and hope. I believe that, so hurry up and get back to work. I'm still waiting to enjoy a delicious meal. Ju Ying reassured them, took Liu back to the courtyard, and taught him a classic poem. She didn't expect the boy's brain to be this smart, being able to remember and recite it to her after being taught 3 times. However, she only taught him a little. After teaching him 5 sentences of the poem, she let him go to the side to play. She turned around and tidied up the main house. Although they did not intend to live in town, if something happened, or it rained, or especially if there were a heavy snowstorm Mrs. Bai once mentioned, the couple would have to have a place to stay. By the time she was almost done with her work, the servant's signature dish was nearly done. First, it was Li Sheng's stir-fried meat. Red and green vegetables were bright yet distinct from each other amongst the meat sauce, as well as the thickness of the meat slices was just right. If it weren't for the fact that the green chili had wilted and lacked some sparkle to it, the appearance of this dish would definitely have been full marks. She picked up a pair of chopsticks, picked up a piece of meat, and put it into her mouth. The meat was tender, smooth, and with a hint of spiciness. It was refreshing, and it was indeed a good dish. Then, she gave him the recipe for twice stir-fried pork and said, "Try to make this dish." "All right, I'll do it now." Li Sheng had a look of joy on his face as he turned around and started making it. Next was Qiu Nyang's dumplings. It was fresh, fragrant, and chewy, stuffed with pork and scallions. It was delicious, and it seemed Ju Ying could hand over making the restaurant's meatballs to her. After eating, she judged, the dumpling filling is well mixed, but the wrap is a little too thick. If you want to make dumplings in the future, you can use light salt water to mix with the flour or add an egg inside to increase the toughness of the flour. Thank you for your guidance, mistress. I will remember it. Qiu Niang replied thoughtfully. Next was Chun Niang's silver silk vegetable rolls. The rolls were yellow, probably roasted, and looked beautiful. After tasting one, she commented, "It's sweet and delicious, with a hint of milk." "Did you put milk in it?" "No, it's cream, isn't it?" Mistress sure has sensitive taste buds. "I did put in some cream," Chun Niang affirmed. "Yup, in the future, make it smaller, the kind that can be eaten in 2 bites. Also, research 5 types of desserts and make a dessert platter. Oh right, there are also all kinds of bean and chestnut cakes. You can make them into a platter too." Ju Ying suggested and gave her the recipe for scallion pancakes and left the rest to her. When Zhao Cheng's soup was served, it was already noon. Jiyu Chungrui had just returned, so everyone took half a bowl and tried it. After Jiyu Chungrui finished drinking, he nodded and said, "Babe, this soup is amazing. It's refreshing, fragrant, and without any medicinal smell. It's very delicious. If you like it, we can have one from time to time in the future. Then I'll be waiting." After the meal, Ju Ying went to Hongyun restaurant and bought a bag of lamb bones from Manager Liu. However, Manager Liu didn't want the money, so Ju Ying said, "Uncle Liu, I'm thinking of buying all the lamb bones here in the future. You can't keep giving them to me for free. However, leave a little more meat on the top. These bones are stripped too clean." Chapter 142 Recruitment. You're not considering selling bones in such a big restaurant, are you? That's not going to attract high-end customers. Manager Liu said, shaking his head. I'm not in the business of bones but of beef and mutton. But I'm worried there won't be enough sheep for sale in my village, so I can only take some from you. I see, that's great. I'll come and see what kind of restaurant you are opening soon. Of course, you're welcome. The 28th is a good day, 3 days later. You must come and support us when it opens. Don't worry, I will. Then I will leave the bones for you from the day after tomorrow. Deal. The mutton is 25 coppers per pound and 10 coppers for the bones. What do you think? No need, just 5 coppers will do. If you don't want it, We usually clean it and feed it to the dogs. Then you better not regret it when my business is doing well, laughed Ju Ying. Don't worry, I won't regret it. All right, thank you, Uncle Liu. By the way, why don't you go over there for dinner tonight? You can also try the taste of the lamb bones. No, I'll wait until your opening. I have an important guest coming over tonight. All right, I'll be going back then. After Ju Ying finished speaking, she turned around and returned to her own restaurant. Then, she gave Zhao Cheng the recipe for making the lamb spine hot pot. From now on, I'll leave the lamb spine hot pot and lamb bone soup to you. As for the herbal cuisine, well, decide the menu and make it after we've decided. Understood. I'll go and prepare now. All right. We'll be eating lamb spine hot pot tonight then. Ju Ying returned to the main house and saw Jiyu Chungrui reading a book. She paused and asked, "Aren't you supposed to be busy over there?" "Not really. The main thing happening over there is the renovation, so there's no need to keep a close eye on it." Jiyu Chungrui pulled her into his arms and kissed her on the cheek. "It's been hard on you. Why don't we hire another manager to help support the front, and you can command from behind? Besides, there are some things that need to be done by you personally, and you might not be able to handle them." "Sure, but finding a suitable manager is not easy. If we put up a notice, those interested will keep an eye on it. At that time, we'll just ask around about his character." "Oh right, there are also the waiters, as 3 is not enough. We need at least 6, or else we won't be able to handle it." "All right, you should write a notice, and we'll put it up later." Ju Ying decided and took out the stationaries from her interspace. Jiyu Chungrui immediately got up and started to prepare. At that time, Ju Ying added, "By the way, we also need to add people in the kitchen. Find 2 to do odd jobs and 2 to wash the dishes." "All right, there's quite a number of people we still need." Jiyu Chungrui sighed. Then, he bent over and started writing the notice. While he was doing that, Ju Ying designed the waistcoat and outfit for the restaurant staff. It could unify their clothing and keep them sanitary, especially with a cooking hat. It would be troublesome if any hair fell into the pot. People came to the door in the afternoon, not long after the notice was put up. The additional kitchen helper and dishwasher positions were quickly taken by 4 strong women. As for the waiters, Ju Ying had picked those who were literate. Otherwise, they wouldn't even know how to write down customer orders. They didn't expect to recruit 4 at a time, and 2 were originally this Dongxing restaurant's employees. Ju Ying hesitated for a moment before accepting them, but she still warned, "This isn't the original Dongxing restaurant, and we're not doing what we did before. If you want to work here, then do it well. Otherwise, please don't blame me for firing you when the time comes." "Don't worry, boss, we understand this, and we will definitely do our best." "Okay. You only have one chance. Cherish it." Chapter 143. Sun Hongliang. While preparing the lamb spine hot pot in the evening, Qian Zhuang and Jiyu Erjiang arrived. Ju Ying introduced them to everyone and told them to sit down and have dinner. After the meal, the 4 climbed into the donkey cart and left home together. Jiyu Erjiang smacked his lips in satisfaction as the wind blew, saying, "Sister-in-law, how did you think of cooking with lamb bones? It's delicious, and I'm sure stuffed. Winter is the season to eat mutton, but sheep don't have much meat, to begin with. It would be a pity to throw away all the bones, so we had to think of a way to eat them." Ju Ying was flattered. "That's true. Sheep aren't pigs, and you really can't get much meat from one." Jiyu Erjiang nodded in agreement. "Hehe, since it's trying out the dishes over these 2 days, can we go over? You don't have to pay us our daily salary." Qian Zhuang asked. "Sure, but you can't just eat but give more suggestions." Ju Ying paused for a moment and added, "By the way, when you collect the vegetables, remember to collect some fungus, such as shiitake mushrooms, tea tree mushrooms, and other mountain products. Also, buy as many white sesame seeds as you can." "All right, leave this to us. You can also buy winter bamboo shoots." Jiyu Chungrui echoed. "Understood." Qian Zhuang nodded. In the evening, Tian Jiawang replied that he could start work the next day. Therefore, the next day, The three went to their manor and took a sheep to the restaurant. Over the next 2 days, Ju Ying stayed in the restaurant during the day to guide them in serving new dishes and establishing the menu. At the same time, she gave a few simple training to the waiters and assigned them to wear red clothes and hats. Of course, the kitchen staff also had their uniforms, but they were all changed to white. In the meantime, the copper pot, skewers, and charcoal were delivered one after another. After Ju Ying taught everyone how to use them, she focused on teaching Tian Jiawang how to make skewers and barbecue them. It was just that they had yet to find a suitable manager for the restaurant. Just as Ju Ying was about to do it herself, Manager Liu came in with a man in his 20s and said, "Mrs. Ju, have you found a suitable manager?" "Not yet. Do you have someone suitable to recommend?" Ju Ying glanced at the man behind Manager Liu. At the same time, she was also a little surprised, as she didn't expect such a young man to have frostbite scars all over his face. "Smart, this is my nephew, Sun Hongliang. He used to be the assistant manager of another restaurant in the north. Now that there's a natural disaster happening, he came to me. But I don't know if you'll want him." "There's a disaster in the north." "What disaster?" Ju Ying asked in surprise. "Snowstorm, giving snow that's 1 meter deep." "Sigh, there was just a drought half a year ago. Who expected that it would suddenly snow this heavily? Wouldn't this kill the people in the north? The weather is abnormal, huh?" Ju Ying commented and looked at Sun Hongliang. "Mr. Sun, how's your accounting? This is the account book I made before. Please have a look." Sun Hongliang took a book from his clothes and handed it to her. Ju Ying opened it and took a look. The daily income of the restaurant, all spending, and the overall amount were clearly stated. "All right, the manager here is mainly in charge of accounting and greeting guests. There shouldn't be any problems with these two, right?" "No, I've done all these before." "That's good. Your monthly salary is 5 taels of silver. Come over early tomorrow." Ju Ying paused and added, "About the cold sores on your face. No worries about that, I will get it treated as soon as possible. Remember to change into new clothes tomorrow and come over early in the morning to prepare for the opening." Ju Ying reminded and looked at Manager Liu. "Uncle Liu, I have to let him stay for a while to familiarize himself with the dishes in the restaurant." Chapter 144 Grassland Taste. It's what he should do. "You guys go ahead." After Manager Liu finished, he looked at Sun Hongliang and said, "Since Mrs. Ju gave you a chance, you must do your best." "Don't worry, uncle. I will do my best." Sun Hongliang bowed. After the two of them sent off Manager Liu, Ju Ying took Sun Hongliang to the kitchen and introduced him to the main dishes in the restaurant. "Finally," she said, "bring a menu home later and note the main points. Also, there will be a 30% discount event tomorrow. We'll only charge 70% of the total price, which is one of our publicity highlights. You must remember it well. In addition, we have a membership point system. If anyone spends 10 taels of silver tomorrow, you will issue them a membership card until you have issued all 100 cards. After that, tell them they could get a 10% discount with the card. Of course, the points would not be recorded after the discount. The customer can get back 10 silver taels for every 100 silver taels spent. That means there are 2 different ways to discount, which is a good way to attract customers." Sun Hongliang commented. "Yes, there are only 100 membership cards. I'll bring them back tomorrow." "Understood." "Oh right, where's your hometown? How far is it from here?" "It's almost near the Northern Territory, about 1,200 miles from here. But don't worry, several counties are between us, so the refugees rarely reach here. I only came here because I have relatives here." "When do you plan to go back?" Sun Hongliang shook his head. "Our house has already collapsed. If I can continue to make a living here, I will stay." "That's good. You don't have to be so polite to me, it sounds awkward. Just talk to me casually in the future." Alright, I understand. Okay, dress up tomorrow and come early." Ju Ying then handed him a menu. "See you tomorrow." Sun Hongliang bowed and turned to leave. After returning home that night, Jiyu Chungrui went to the village to inform the guests he was planning to invite. After dinner, The two entered the interspace. Ju Ying printed 100 cards on special printing paper used for business cards. The front of the membership card was printed with the traditional characters of Grassland Taste membership card in gold. There was also a picture of a grassland shepherd in the background. The back was empty, and she planned to use a quill to add the members' information. This way, it would play an anti-forgery role to a certain extent. Finally, she used the same paper to print 100 copies of the menu. You shouldn't do this as this paper isn't waterproof, and it'll be destroyed if the customers aren't careful. Jiyu Chungrue walked over and reminded her. Then what do you think we should do? We can't possibly laminate it, right? There will be problems if others see it. Ju Ying turned her head and asked. I remember we received a batch of transparent waterproof paint before, the kind used to paint furniture, so we can try that. If someone asks, just say that you used tree oil, and no one will look into it. Then let's try that. Ju Ying agreed and went to a warehouse to find the paint. After mixing the ingredients according to the ratio instructed, she found a brush and lathered it on a membership card. She didn't expect the effect to be so good, as even the handwriting wasn't affected. Then, she painted all the membership cards, dried them, and swiped the other side. She gathered them all after they dried. The next morning, because they no longer had to make tofu, the two carried the hot pot base ingredient Ju Ying had prepared beforehand and went out in new clothes. After they reached the restaurant, Sun Hongliang and the rest were already prepared. They hung a red silk cloth on the signboard and went up and greeted them politely. They didn't stay long at the entrance and handed over the restaurant's opening to Sun Hongliang. In the backyard, Ju Ying walked to Fang Qing, who was cutting meat, and asked, Fang Qing, have you done what I asked you to do yesterday? Chapter 145 Opening 1. Yes, mistress, it's all done. They should be here soon. Just as Fang Qing finished speaking, someone knocked on the back door. He immediately went to open the door and saw a few young beggars walking in. The group leader asked, Brother Fang, we're here. Do you mean what you said? Of course, 2 pounds of polished rice per person. Fang Qing affirmed and looked at Ju Ying. Our boss is here. If you don't believe me, you can ask her. That's right. We agreed on 2 pounds per person. Why don't we give it to you now? Ju Ying said. No need, but can you change it to black noodles? That way, we can eat for a longer time. No problem, 3 pounds of black noodles each, and I'll give you 1 pound of lard as a gift. Then it's settled. The leader immediately agreed, then turned around and pulled Fang Qing to ask for the brochure, as if he feared she would return on her words. Ju Ying smiled and didn't speak. Instead, she picked up the sliced lard and went to the kitchen to stir-fry the hot pot base ingredients. The locals here rarely ate spicy food, so she made a mild spice base. At the same time, she also boiled a pot of bones with mushroom soup. Together with Zhao Cheng's lamb spine hot pot, it should be enough. The remaining soup base had to be slowly pushed out, or there would be no surprises in the future. After she was done, she began to mix the sauce. As for Jiyu Chungrue, he took a look at the skewers. After ensuring they passed the test, he helped cut the mutton into pieces. Soon, a few beggars began shouting on the street with their brochures. They were also smart enough to find well-dressed people to distribute the flyers. In the afternoon, they even turned around and went to the Yunshan Academy in town. It was full of scholars and was also where rich people gathered. At the same time, Sun Hongliang came over and began to get busy with the waiters. Soon, Manager Liu came with a congratulatory gift, followed by Dr. Luo. The patriarch, the clan elders, the village chief, Father Jiyu, and even the second uncle Jiyu were here. Finally, it was Chang Shun, the head of their manor. As for Uncle Nyan, although he was invited, he didn't come as he didn't like to stand out. Father Jiyu and second uncle Jiyu looked at the huge restaurant with complicated expressions. Who would have thought that the person they had abandoned would have the ability to support such a big restaurant? If they had known earlier, he would not have taken that step no matter what. After everyone in the village sat down, second uncle Jiyu looked at the patriarch and asked, Brother, do you know who hired Ju Ying? Such a big restaurant must have a powerful person backing it. If you don't know, how would I know? If there's good food, just eat it. The patriarch warned. The opening was a big day. If they dared cause trouble, he would definitely teach them a good lesson. Father Jiyu and second uncle Jiyu were embarrassed, but they weren't stupid. It was obvious that Chung Rui and his wife were going up the ladder, so why would they find trouble with them? Even if there were something, they would discuss it in private. Next, a few neighbors on the same street came in. Zhu Huaiming came in with a few county and town officials when it was almost time to open. Seeing Sun Hongliang, he was stunned. Hey! It's you, where's? When he said this, he suddenly remembered Jiyu Chengru's request and immediately changed his words. Should I call for the head chef? You're talking about Manager Zhu, right? That's right, Manager Zhu. I've brought her a few distinguished guests today, so it's better for her to come out and get to know them. Please wait a moment. Sun Hongliang turned and ran to the back kitchen. He called Zhu Ying out, and Jiyu Chongrui followed. Chapter 146 Opening 2. Mr. Zhu, Brother Zhu. The couple stepped forward and saluted. Why are you acting like an outsider? We were family 500 years ago, so calling me Big Brother Zhu is much nicer. Zhu Huaiming pointed at Zhu Ying and said. Then, he pointed to a middle-aged man with a mustache who was in his 30s and introduced him. This is our county's new county mayor, Mr. Kong. He is also this year's top scholar. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Mr. Kong. The couple immediately bowed. You're welcome. I am here with Mr. Zhu for a delicious meal, so we'll have to ask for your recommendations. Mr. Kong smiled as he stepped forward to help them up. Zhu Huaiming then introduced them to the newly appointed county governor. He was a tall and thin man in his 40s with a mustache. He was also one of the few top scholars in the county, and his name was Bai Jinping. Then it was the secretaries and the advisor. The last was the town chief, Tian Jingzhong, who was also the constable of this town. He was a man in his 40s, and his stomach was as big as a pregnant woman's. After the introduction, Sun Hongliang immediately walked over and said anxiously, Manager Zhu, it's time for the opening. So, then let's start. Zhu Ying decided and said to Zhu Huaiming, Big Brother Zhu, are you interested in attending the opening ceremony? Sure, let's go together with Brother Jiyu then. Zhu Huaiming nodded and walked out with Jiyu Chongrui. Seeing this, the others also hurriedly followed. When Sun Hongliang saw this, he immediately arranged for the workers outside to start setting off the firecrackers. Zhu Ying scattered the fruit candies wrapped in oil paper she had prepared earlier into the crowd. At the same time, the sound of cannons rang out. Jiyu Chongrui and Zhu Huaiming each pulled down the red silk on one side. In an instant, the black and red characters of House of Grassland Taste were presented in front of everyone. There were also 2 cartoon figures of a cow and a sheep drawn on the banner. Everyone's eyes lit up, and the children cheered. After a while, Sun Hongliang stepped forward and thanked everyone. Then, he told them about the 30% discount and the membership card. There are different kinds of food with a unique experience here. Everyone is welcome to come to the House of Grassland Taste and try it. So would the ingredients used be from the grassland? Someone in the crowd asked. It seems so, with mutton as the main selling point. Let's try them out and see how special they claim to be. The person to his left answered, let's go. There's a 30% discount today, and in the future, it'll only be 10% at most. It's a waste not to take advantage of it. The person on his right added. Afterward, the 3 walked into the restaurant together, and Sun Hongliang quickly welcomed them in. On the other hand, Jiyu Chongrui brought Zhu Huaiming and the others, including Manager Liu, into a private room on the 2nd floor. Finally, at everyone's request, they were arranged to go to the chess-decorated room. Zhu Ying personally prepared a pot of the most expensive tea sold here, the sparrow's tongue. At the same time, she also prepared a plate of snacks, fried broad beans with crispy peanuts. Finally, she warmed a pot of water for them on the stove and asked, Sirs, is there anything you don't like, maybe not too spicy or stimulating? Oh, are there so many options on your menu? Manager Liu asked in surprise. I guess so. The mutton is slightly gamey to some, and so is the chili. So if you can't eat spice, we'll have to arrange other dishes. We're here to taste the food anyway, so you can just arrange it for us. If there's a taboo, you can just tell us later. Zhu Huaiming said. Alright, then I will go and make the arrangements. Zhu Ying responded and turned to go out. She arranged a slightly spicy hot pot with cabbage, radish, wintermelon, agarwood, blood tofu, white tofu, shrimp, fish, shredded pork, tofu, and vermicelli. The meat used in the hot pot was naturally mutton ribs. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.